When my son died, my daughter-in-law told me, "Don't be so dramatic. Pack your bags and learn to survive." I dried my tears and spent the next 2 weeks living out of my Ford Focus. That was when my son's lawyer called me with some good news. I never imagined that losing my son would only be the second worst thing to happen to me that week. It had been exactly 7 days since Michael passed away when Beatrice walked into the living room. I was sitting there, folding his old university sweatshirts, tears falling silently onto the soft, worn fabric. The funeral flowers were still fresh in their vases, their cloying sweet scent mixing with the faint trace of Michael's cologne that still clung to his clothes. "Carol, we need to talk," she said. Her voice no longer held the practiced softness she'd used at the funeral, nor the feigned sympathy she displayed when friends and family were around. It was brisk, efficient. I looked up, my heart aching, assuming we would talk about the children, Emily and Jacob, or maybe about what to do with some of Michael's things. But there she was, standing in the doorway, wearing designer jeans and a silk blouse that surely cost more than my monthly Social Security check. Her perfectly manicured nails tapped an impatient rhythm on the door frame. "Of course, dear. What is it?" I replied, my voice raspy from a week of quiet weeping. Beatrice entered the room but didn't sit down. She stood over me, an imposing figure, as I sat in Michael's favorite armchair, the worn leather one he'd insisted on keeping, even though it clashed with her minimalist, all-white aesthetic. "I've been thinking about the house," she said, and I felt something cold drop in the pit of my stomach. With Michael gone, things have to change. The kids and I need space to grieve. And honestly, having you here is it's too much right now. I blinked, trying to process her words. "Too much? You're always crying," she stated, her tone clinical, as if diagnosing a problem. "Always touching his things, always acting like he's going to walk through the door any minute. It's not healthy for the children to see their grandmother like this. They need stability, not someone who is constantly mourning in front of them." My hands froze on the cardigan I was folding, Michael's favorite gray one that he wore every Sunday morning while reading the paper. He had worn it just 3 weeks before the cancer reached its final brutal stage. "Beatrice, this is my home too. Michael and I talked about it before he got sick. He wanted me to be here, close to the children, close to family." My voice was softer than I had intended, a whisper against her wall of certainty. She let out a short, cold laugh, a sound utterly devoid of humor. "Michael said a lot of things when he was on medication and not thinking clearly. The truth is, the house is in my name now, and I need you to start packing." Her words hit me like a physical blow to the gut. For a moment I couldn't breathe. "Don't be so dramatic, Carol," she said, her voice sharp. "You're an adult. Make some plans and learn to take care of yourself. Michael always said you were stronger than you looked." She paused in front of the hallway mirror to fluff her perfectly highlighted hair. "You'll be fine. You always land on your feet." I thought of the small savings account Michael had helped me maintain. It was barely enough for a deposit on a tiny studio apartment, let alone to cover rent in this expensive Chicago suburb where my grandchildren lived, where Michael was buried, where I had built my entire world for the past 5 years. "What about Emily and Jacob?" I asked, my voice trembling. "I watch them after school. I help them with their homework. I cook for them." My voice trailed off as I saw the blankness in her expression. "I'll handle it. I'll hire someone. Anyway, maybe it's time they grew up a bit. Michael spoiled them too much, and frankly, so did you." Her casual coldness was a physical pain in my chest. She was talking about her own children, the same ones who ran to me for hugs with scraped knees, the ones who begged for my bedtime stories, the ones who said I was their favorite grandma because I was the only one they had. Beatrice's parents, living in Florida, had never shown any real interest in being grandparents. "How much time do I have?" I managed to ask, the words feeling like gravel in my throat. "I'd like you to be gone by tomorrow afternoon. I have people coming to see about redecorating Michael's office, and I don't want a tense atmosphere." Tomorrow afternoon. 24 hours to undo 5 years of a life I had built here, a life Michael had begged me to be a part of. He had insisted I sell my small condo across town and move in to help with the kids when Beatrice went back to work full-time. "Where am I supposed to go, Beatrice? I have nothing arranged. Could I have a week, maybe 2, just to figure things out?" Her face showed no compassion. If anything, she looked more annoyed. "Carol, I need you to stop making this harder than it has to be. Michael is gone. Everything has changed. You are not my responsibility. Not her responsibility. Not after 5 years of dinner she didn't have time to cook. Of nights spent caring for feverish children, while she attended work conferences in other cities. Of keeping the house in order while she tended to her busy social life. Not after 5 years of being the grandmother who never missed a school play or a soccer game, who knew every favorite snack and every bedtime story by heart. I nodded slowly, afraid my voice would break if I spoke again. I'll start packing tonight. As I rose from the chair, my joints aching, Beatrice's voice stopped me. Oh, and Carol? I'd appreciate it if you didn't upset the children. They've been through enough. The last thing they need is to see you lose control. That night, I packed everything I owned into the same 2 suitcases I had first arrived with. I was surprised by how little there truly was. Most of the furniture in my room belonged to the house, and over time, I had donated or given away almost everything that was once mine, keeping only necessities and a few precious mementos. I folded Michael's gray sweater and placed it in the suitcase alongside a framed photo of him holding the children on their last Christmas morning, their faces bright with joy. I left the small television he'd bought me, the comfortable armchair he gave me as a welcome gift, the bookshelf filled with novels we used to read and discuss over coffee on Sunday mornings. Writing the note for Emily and Jacob was the hardest part. How do you explain to an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old that their grandmother is leaving without making their mother seem like the villain she was? How do you say goodbye without promising you'll see them soon, when you don't even know where you'll be sleeping that night? In the end, I kept it simple. Grandma Carol had to move to a new place, but she loves you both so very much. Be good for your mom. With love and hugs always. I taped the note to the bathroom mirror, where I knew they would see it when they woke up. I couldn't face their confused little faces, their inevitable tears. Beatrice was right about one thing. They had already lost their father. They didn't need to see their grandmother fall apart too. When the sun rose over the quiet tree-lined street where Michael had once proudly bought his dream home, I loaded my car with the last of my belongings. The trunk of my old Ford Focus barely closed, and the back seat held a few groceries I'd taken from the pantry. Crackers, a jar of peanut butter, bottles of water, things that wouldn't spoil. I sat in the driveway for a long moment, looking at the house where my son had lived his final years, where my grandchildren were likely still sleeping, unaware that one of the few constants in their lives had just vanished. Beatrice appeared at the kitchen window, a coffee mug in hand, watching me with the vacant expression one gives a garage sale across the street. She was just making sure I was leaving. Making sure I wouldn't change my mind and stay to ruin her new beginning. I put the car in reverse and drove away from the only family I had left, with no destination and no idea how I would face what came next. 2 weeks. That's about how long a person can sleep in their car before the shame starts to crush you like a physical weight. I was parked behind a 24-hour diner on the edge of town, far enough from Michael's neighborhood to not run into anyone I knew, but close enough to drive by the kids' school occasionally and maybe, just maybe, catch a glimpse of them during recess. It sounds pathetic, and maybe it was, but those little sightings were the only thing bringing any light into my increasingly dark world. At first, I told myself it was just temporary, that I'd find a solution, rent a room, find a cheap little apartment. I applied to 3 senior living facilities, but the waiting lists were months long, and the deposits were far beyond what I could afford. The few affordable places I visited were in rough areas, the kind of neighborhoods where you don't even feel safe walking to your car in broad daylight, let alone sleeping in it alone at night. My days became a constant balancing act between staying safe and holding on to the little dignity I had left. At 6 a.m. when the diner opened, I'd go in to use the restroom, wash my face and brush my teeth. I'd order a coffee and a piece of toast, the cheapest thing on the menu, and sit at a booth, nursing that cup for hours, pretending to read an old newspaper someone had left behind. The hardest part wasn't the physical discomfort, though sleeping in the driver's seat left my body aching in ways I didn't know were possible. It wasn't even the fear, though strange noises jolted me awake every night, and occasionally the beam of a security guard's flashlight would sweep across my window. I was always afraid someone would discover I was living in my car and call the police. The worst part was feeling invisible. I had become a ghost in my own life. Just yesterday I saw my old neighbor, Sharon, at the grocery store. I was in the checkout line with another loaf of bread and a jar of peanut butter, My only meals for the week, and she walked right past me as if I didn't exist. The same Sharon I used to have coffee with whom I exchanged Christmas cookies for 5 years. But now I was invisible. I understood. I looked like a homeless person because that's what I was. Though I tried to keep my clothes clean by washing them in the diner's bathroom sink, they were wrinkled and worn from being slept in. My hair, normally neat, hung limp around my face. I had lost more weight than I could afford to, and the dark circles under my eyes were too deep to be hidden with the little makeup I had left. But it wasn't just how I looked. I had crossed that invisible line between the housed and the unhoused. And once you do, people just stop seeing you. You become background noise, something others prefer not to acknowledge. The biggest blow came when I drove past Michael's old house, which was also my house, hoping to see Emily and Jacob playing in the yard. But what I saw punched the air from my lungs. There was a large dumpster in the driveway, filled with furniture and other items. I saw Michael's desk, the one where he sat to help the children with their homework. His bookshelf was being tossed in, still full of the books we used to talk about over coffee. The leather armchair where he always fell asleep watching movies with the kids on Sundays was being carried out by 2 men. And right there, next to the dumpster, directing the men on what to take out next, was Beatrice. She was wearing expensive athletic clothes, probably worth more than I had spent on food all month. Her phone was pressed to her ear, and she was laughing at whatever the person on the other end was saying. I watched as they brought out the small end table from Michael's den, the one he used for his laptop in his final months when he could no longer climb the stairs. The very table where he had spent hours organizing old family photos, writing letters for the kids' birthdays he knew he wouldn't live to see. Beatrice simply gestured at it, treating it like trash as it was thrown into the dumpster with a loud crash that echoed down the quiet suburban block. I drove off before she could see me, my hands shaking so badly I had to pull into a random parking lot and just sit there, gripping the steering wheel until it passed. How could she throw away something so full of memories? How could she erase him like that, as if he never existed, all in the name of redecorating? I made the mistake of logging into Facebook from the library computer during my usual internet hour. Beatrice had posted a photo of what looked like a completely remodeled living room. Everything was white and metallic, starkly minimalist. Nothing like the cozy den where Michael used to build blanket forts with the children. Her caption read, "Sometimes you have to make space for the new. Grateful for new beginnings and second chances." The comments were just what I expected. People praising her strength, her resilience, her focus on moving forward. Someone even wrote, "Michael would be so proud of how you're handling everything." I closed the browser without reading the rest. That night, parked behind the diner, I finally let myself cry. Not the silent tears that had occasionally escaped over the past few weeks, but body-shaking sobs that came from a place I hadn't touched in years. I cried for Michael, for the grandchildren I might never see again, for the life that was gone, and for the woman I used to be. But most of all, I cried because I was starting to believe what Beatrice's actions had been telling me all along, that I was worthless. That 5 years of love, care, and sacrifice meant nothing. That I was a burden to be discarded the moment I became inconvenient. After that emotional collapse, I fell asleep against the car door, my face pressed to the cold glass. I dreamed of Michael as a little boy, tugging on my apron, asking me for help to reach something on a high shelf. In the dream I was young again, strong again, and needed. I was woken by the ringing of my cell phone, an unknown number flashing on the cracked screen. For a second I thought about letting it go to voicemail. Lately, unknown numbers were either debt collectors or robocalls. But something made me answer. "Mrs. Thompson? This is Arthur Fleming from Fleming and Associates. I was your son Michael's attorney." My heart lurched. As far as I knew, when a lawyer calls, it's usually about bills, legal trouble, or insurance messes, things I had no energy or means to deal with. I sat up straight, trying to sound more put together than I felt, sitting in a car behind a diner at 11 o'clock in the morning. "Yes, this is Carol Thompson. I've been trying to reach you for several days. We need to discuss some urgent matters related to Michael's estate. Could you come to my office today? It's very important." Estate. Michael was always smart with money, but I thought everything he had would automatically go to Beatrice and the children. "I'm not sure I understand. Beatrice is handling all of Michael's affairs now." There was a pause on the other end. "Mrs. Thompson, Your sons will contain specific instructions that directly involve you. Instructions that, I should add, Mrs. Beatrice Thompson is unaware of. I really need to see you in person. Something in the way he spoke made my heart beat faster. Can you tell me what this is about? Not over the phone. Could you come by my office tomorrow at 10 a.m.? I'm downtown on LaSalle Street. I looked down at my wrinkled clothes and ran a hand through my unwashed hair. Mr. Fleming, I should warn you. I'm going through a difficult time. I may not look very presentable. Mrs. Thompson, he said, his voice gentle but firm. Please just come as you are. This can't wait any longer. 3 hours later I was sitting in the most elegant office I had ever seen, feeling completely out of place. Arthur Fleming looked to be in his 50s, dignified, with kind eyes behind thin-rimmed glasses. He offered me a cup of coffee, which I accepted gratefully. It was the first decent cup I'd had in weeks. Mrs. Thompson, before we begin, I need to ask you something, and please be honest. What is your current living situation? The question caught me off guard, and I felt my face flush with shame. Let's just say I'm between places right now. His expression turned serious. Michael told me there might be trouble with Beatrice after he passed. Are you staying with anyone? Friends, family? The warmth in his tone almost broke me. I looked down at my hands clutching the hot mug. I'm living in my car. I see. He jotted something in his notebook. I braced myself for judgment, but I saw none, only empathy. Michael was a perceptive man. He saw this coming. He pulled a thick manila folder from his drawer and opened it. Mrs. Thompson, I need to read you some portions of your son's will. But first, what do you know about Michael's finances? Not much. I knew he had some insurance through work in the house, but I thought everything went to Beatrice and the kids. Mr. Fleming nodded slowly. Michael came to see me about 8 months ago, just after he received his diagnosis. He had very clear instructions about changes he wanted made to his will. He wanted them kept absolutely confidential until after his death. He adjusted his glasses and picked up a document. Allow me to read the part you need to hear. To my beloved mother Carol Thompson, who gave up so much for my own happiness and well-being, I leave the sum of $11 million. This amount will be held in a trust and managed by Fleming and Associates until Mrs. Thompson can secure stable housing and financial control. The words just hung there in the quiet, wood-paneled office. I stared at him, convinced I had misheard. I'm sorry. Could you read that again? $11 million, Mrs. Thompson. Your son was much wealthier than most people knew. He had been investing very successfully for years, and his life insurance policy was far more substantial than his wife was aware of. I felt dizzy. But Beatrice said everything belonged to her now. Mrs. Thompson, may I ask exactly what Beatrice told you? I told him everything. How she kicked me out, the cold, clinical way she did it, how she had completely erased my 5 years of helping their family. As I spoke, Mr. Fleming's face darkened. Michael anticipated this. Exactly, he said when I finished. There's another part of the will you need to hear. He turned to another section. If my wife, Beatrice Thompson, takes any action to remove my mother from our home or attempts to block her relationship with my children, Emily Thompson and Jacob Thompson, full custody of Emily Thompson and Jacob Thompson will be granted to my mother, Carol Thompson, with full financial support provided by the aforementioned trust. My hands went numb. The coffee cup slipped from my fingers, and Mr. Fleming quickly caught it before it could fall on the expensive Persian rug. Custody? How could that be possible? Michael filed all the necessary paperwork months ago. He had carefully documented several red flags he'd noticed in Beatrice, how she was becoming increasingly obsessed with his life insurance, the way she talked about starting over when he was gone, and how disconnected she seemed from the children's grief. He then pulled out another folder, this one much thicker. Michael also recorded multiple conversations with Beatrice in the weeks before his death. In these recordings, she openly discusses her plans for after his passing, including kicking you out and possibly taking the children to Florida to live closer to her sister. He recorded their calls? Yes. On my legal advice. Michael had serious concerns about what would happen to his children. He had noticed that Beatrice didn't really see them as their own people, but more as accessories to her lifestyle. Mr. Fleming opened another file. There's also a letter he wrote for you which goes with all of this. Would you like me to read it? Or would you prefer to read it yourself? My hands were shaking so badly, I didn't think I could hold the paper steady. Could you read it, please? He unfolded a sheet covered in Michael's unmistakable, slightly messy handwriting. Mom, if you're reading this, then my greatest fear about Beatrice has come true. I'm so sorry I couldn't say anything sooner, but I was afraid she would turn the kids against you if she found out what I was beginning to suspect about her true feelings for our family. I've been watching her closely, and I've seen the way she looks at you when she thinks no one is watching. I overheard her on the phone with her sister, talking about how much simpler her life will be once she doesn't have to deal with Michael's needy little mother. I'm sure she's told you that you're not welcome, maybe even that you're a burden. She's wrong. You are the most generous, kind-hearted person I have ever known. You gave up your own peace and comfort to come support us, and I will never ever forget that. The money I'm leaving you isn't just a gift. It's my way of paying you back for all the years you sacrificed to take care of us. It's also my way of making sure you can protect Emily and Jacob the same way you always protected me. I know Beatrice will try to fight this, but she won't win. You are their grandmother, and you love them in a way she never has and never will. They need you, Mom. I need you to be there for them. Don't let guilt or doubt stop you from taking your rightful place. You earned every last dollar of that money, and those children deserve to have at least one parent figure who truly puts their emotional needs first. I love you, and I'm sorry it took me so long to make sure you were okay. With love, your grateful son, Michael. By the time Mr. Fleming finished reading, I could no longer hold back the tears. But this time they weren't tears of sadness. They came from a place of profound relief, of finally being seen, of justice, and underneath it all, a strength I hadn't felt in weeks. When can we move forward with the custody papers? I asked, my voice firmer than it had sounded in a long time. Mr. Fleming smiled warmly. We can file everything this afternoon. But first, let's get you out of that car and into a hotel while we arrange something more long-term. Michael made sure to leave funds for your immediate needs. As we went over the next steps, I felt something inside me shift. For the past 2 weeks, I had felt powerless, trapped by Beatrice's cruelty and my own sense of defeat. But in that office, hearing how my son had orchestrated a whole plan from beyond the grave to protect me and the children, I understood something fundamental. I was no longer helpless. I was about to become the most important person in Emily and Jacob's lives, now with the financial means to give them everything they could ever need, and the legal power to protect them from their mother's emotional indifference. What Michael left me wasn't just money. It was purpose, strength, and the chance to carry on his legacy by caring for his children as he had always cared for me. For the first time in weeks, I let myself smile. 3 days later, I was standing in front of the house I had called home for 5 years, but everything felt different now. I held legal documents that completely changed the balance of power. Mr. Fleming had insisted on accompanying me, along with a county social worker and a police officer. He explained this was standard procedure in custody transitions. I had spent the last 2 nights in a comfortable hotel suite, enjoying room service and long, hot showers while Mr. Fleming's team finalized emergency housing arrangements and processed all the necessary legal paperwork. I was wearing new clothes, nothing fancy but clean and well-fitting. I'd had my hair done, and for the first time in weeks I felt like myself again. But the biggest change wasn't on the outside. It was in my posture, my presence, the quiet confidence of someone who no longer felt powerless. As we walked up the path to the front door, Mr. Fleming said quietly, "Remember, let me take the lead at first. This will come as a shock to Mrs. Thompson, and she may react emotionally." The police officer, a woman with a kind face, nodded toward the house. "I see movement inside. It looks like someone's home." I pressed the doorbell, the same familiar chime I had heard countless times, but never like this, not as someone now holding legal authority. Through the frosted glass of the front door, I saw Beatrice approaching. She was probably expecting a package delivery, or maybe a friend dropping by to admire her latest remodel. When she opened the door, her expression shifted from confusion to recognition, then to annoyance, and finally to unmistakable panic when she saw the official standing behind me. "Carol? What is this? What are you doing here?" Mr. Fleming stepped forward calmly. "Mrs. Thompson, I'm Arthur Fleming, Michael's attorney. We need to speak with you about some urgent legal matters concerning your children. May we come in? I don't understand. Carol, why is the police here? Did something happen? Are you in some kind of trouble? The irony hit me hard. Even now, with lawyers and legal papers clearly backing me up, Beatrice's first instinct was to assume I was the problem, that I must have done something wrong. Ma'am, the officer said gently, we're here to facilitate a legal transfer of custody. May we come inside and speak privately? Beatrice turned pale but stepped aside to let us in. The living room looked exactly as it did in her social media photos. Cold, expensive, and completely devoid of any sign that children actually lived there. All of Michael's warm touches were gone. No family photos on the mantle, no cozy furniture where the kids used to sit to do their homework or watch a movie. Where are Emily and Jacob? The social worker asked, glancing at her clipboard. They're at school, Beatrice answered automatically, but her expression changed as she realized the true meaning of the question. What? Custody transfer? What are you talking about? Mr. Fleming opened his briefcase and removed the documents we had already reviewed. Mrs. Thompson, I need to inform you of certain clauses in your late husband's will that are now being executed. As he read the relevant sections aloud, I never took my eyes off Beatrice. I watched her carefully constructed facade begin to crumble, revealing something desperate and raw underneath. That's impossible, she snapped, her voice high-pitched. Michael never mentioned any of that. You're making this up. I have all the original documentation right here, Mrs. Thompson, Mr. Fleming said calmly, including audio recordings of your conversations with Michael where these topics were clearly discussed. Recordings. Her voice became almost a whisper. Mr. Fleming produced a small digital recorder. Michael recorded several conversations where you discussed your plans after his death, including your plan to remove Mrs. Carol Thompson from the children's lives and possibly relocate to Florida. He pressed play and Michael's voice filled the room. Hearing it again was like a punch to the chest. B, I need to know what your intentions are with my mom when I'm gone. The recorded voice of Beatrice sounded flat, distant. Michael, we've talked about this. Your mom is sweet, but she's not my responsibility. The kids and I need space to heal and move on. Move on to where? I've been thinking about Florida. A fresh start near my sister. The kids would love the beach. And Mom, your mother is an adult. She'll manage. The audio continued, but I was no longer listening. I was watching Beatrice's face, her reaction to hearing her own voice dismissing me like a piece of old furniture she no longer wanted. When the recording ended, the silence in the room was absolute. How dare you? Beatrice whispered. For a moment I thought she was speaking to Mr. Fleming. Then she turned to me, her eyes blazing with a mixture of fury and fear. How dare you come into my house with these people and try to take my children from me? They're not just your children, I said, my voice steady for the first time since we arrived. They're Michael's too. And according to his will, I am now responsible for them. You can't do this. I'll fight you. I'll prove to a judge that you're unfit. You have no money, you have no job, you have no home. Mr. Fleming stepped in. Mrs. Thompson, you should be aware that Mrs. Carol Thompson is now the legal beneficiary of an $11 million inheritance from Michael's estate. Her financial and housing situations are completely secure. That number was like a slap in the face to Beatrice. She actually staggered back, bracing herself against the sleek white leather armchair that had replaced Michael's cozy old sofa. 11 million? Her voice was barely a whisper. But the life insurance was only 2 million. I already received that. Michael had other investments and assets besides the insurance, Mrs. Thompson, Mr. Fleming explained calmly. Assets he chose to leave to his mother, along with custody of his children. I watched Beatrice's mind race trying to catch up. The moment it clicked was visible. Not only had she lost the children, but she had also lost the fortune she surely believed was rightfully hers. This isn't right, she said, and for the first time, her voice broke with something that sounded like genuine pain. I'm their mother. I've been raising them. Have you? The words slipped out before I could stop them. When was the last time you stayed up with Emily during one of her nightmares about her dad? When did you sit with Jacob while he cried because he missed bedtime stories? Beatrice opened her mouth but said nothing. When was the last time you cooked them dinner instead of ordering takeout? When did you ask them how they were really feeling, instead of telling them to get over their sadness because it inconvenienced your plans? That's not true. I was grieving too. No, I said, my voice firm. You were redecorating. You were planning your new beginning. You were throwing out your husband's most cherished belongings and telling his children not to be dramatic when they had feelings. The social worker looked up from her notes. Mrs. Thompson, the children need to be picked up from school today. Have their belongings been packed? Beatrice looked around the cold, perfect room as if seeing it for the first time. They're their things? Their clothes are upstairs. Most of their toys are in storage or we donated them. The police officer spoke up, checking a report on her phone. The documents we received indicate several boxes of the children's belongings were removed from the house last week. I felt a fresh surge of anger. You got rid of their toys? Their father's things? I was just trying to help them move on, Beatrice said, her voice now in tatters. All those old things were just reminders of what they lost. Those old things were their connection to their father. I told her, my voice shaking with rage. Those were the memories they will need someday when they're older and want to remember how much he cared. The social worker closed her notebook. Mrs. Thompson, we will be picking the children up at 3:15 at school dismissal. Mrs. Carol Thompson has temporary housing arranged, and a permanent solution will be organized within a week. As the official party started to leave to meet the school schedule, Beatrice grabbed my arm, her grip surprisingly strong. Carol, please. You don't understand what you're doing. These children need stability, structure. I can give them that. I looked down at her hand on my arm and remembered all the times I had tried to reach out over the years, offering help, comfort, support, only to be politely rebuffed. Beatrice, I said quietly, pulling my arm away. You had your chance to give them stability. What you gave them was takeout and a home renovation. I walked to the door, then paused. The children will still be able to see you. Michael wanted them to have a relationship with their mother. But it will be supervised visits and it will be on my terms. This isn't over, she yelled after me. But even she didn't sound convinced. As we drove to the elementary school, I felt a strange mix of grief and hope. Grief for the family Michael had fought so hard to keep together, and hope that Emily and Jacob would finally have what they truly needed. Not a perfect house or expensive clothes, but someone who would listen to them, honor their father's memory, and love them with everything she had, just like Michael had always loved me. When Emily saw me standing outside her third-grade classroom, the first words out of her mouth weren't, "Grandma Carol," or, "What are you doing here?" She whispered something that broke my heart into 1,000 pieces. "Are you real? Or am I dreaming again?" I knelt in front of her, ignoring the teachers and other parents who were watching. "I'm real, sweetie. And I'm here to take you and Jacob home." "But, Mommy said you left because you didn't want to live with us anymore." Her voice was so quiet, so careful, as if she were afraid that saying the wrong thing would make me disappear again. I felt the social worker's gentle hand on my shoulder, a reminder to be careful with my words, that this moment was part of a legal record. But looking at Emily's confused, hopeful little face, none of that mattered. "Your mommy was mistaken, Emily. I never ever wanted to leave you. I love you and Jacob more than anything in the world." Just then, Jacob came out of his 5th grade classroom, and his typical 10-year-old confidence vanished when he saw me. His face lit up for a second with pure joy, then he seemed to remember something, and it shut down again. "Mom said you were mad at us," he said as he approached, trying to sound casual but failing miserably. "She said that's why you didn't say goodbye." I looked at these two incredible children and saw the emotional walls they had already started to build, how they had learned to protect themselves from further heartbreak. In just 2 weeks, they were already adapting to a world where people you love could vanish without a trace. "Jacob, Emily, I need you both to listen to me very carefully," I said, sitting down on the hallway floor to be at their level. "I didn't leave because I was angry with you, or because I didn't want to be with you. I left because your mom asked me to. And at the time I thought I had to respect her decision." "But you're our grandma," Emily said, her eyes starting to well up with tears. "Grandmas don't leave." "You're absolutely right. Grandmas shouldn't leave. And I am never, ever leaving you again." The social worker cleared her throat gently. Kids, your grandmother is going to be taking care of you from now on. She has a nice new place already, and all the legal arrangements have been made. Jacob's eyes widened. So, we don't have to live with Mom anymore? The question hung in the air, and I realized these children had been just as unhappy in that sterile house without Michael as I had feared. They were mourning not just their father, but the safety and love that had vanished from their lives the day he died. You'll still see your mom, I explained gently, but you're going to live with me. We'll have our own place with your things and all of your dad's memories. Can I put up pictures of Daddy in my room? Emily asked immediately. Mommy took them all down because she said they made her too sad. You can have all the pictures you want. We'll cover the whole wall with pictures of your dad if it makes you happy. Jacob looked uncertain. Mom said you didn't have any money, and that's why you had to leave. How are you going to take care of us if you don't have money? I smiled, remembering the conversation I'd had with Mr. Fleming about how to explain the inheritance to the children. Your dad made sure I would be okay so that I could take care of you. He was very smart with his money, and he loved us all very, very much. Daddy left you money? Emily asked, her eyes wide. He left me something much more valuable than money, I said, pulling her into a hug. He left me the responsibility of taking care of the two most important people in his life. You and Jacob. The drive to our temporary housing, a furnished 3-bedroom apartment that Mr. Fleming's office had secured, was quiet. The children were in the back seat, whispering occasionally, trying to make sense of all the sudden changes. When we arrived, I watched their reactions as they saw the place. It was simple but cozy, not the elegant museum-like house they shared with Beatrice, but it had a warmth that house had long since lost. This is your room, Emily, I said, showing her the smaller bedroom that I had already started to decorate with some of her rescued favorites. A few stuffed animals, some books, her butterfly-shaped nightlight. And Jacob, this one is yours. Jacob stood in the doorway looking at the single bed, a small desk for homework, and an empty shelf waiting to be filled. It's smaller than my room at Mom's house, he said. It is, I agreed. Is that okay with you? He was quiet for a moment. It feels warmer, he said finally. Like someone who actually cares about me picked it out. That first night we ordered pizza and ate it sitting on the living room floor, straight out of the box. Something Beatrice never would have allowed in her pristine home. I told them stories about their dad when he was a boy, stories they had never heard. And I watched them really laugh for the first time in weeks. Did Dad really put peanut butter in his hair? Emily giggled, a smear of tomato sauce on her chin. He thought it would make his hair grow faster, to look like his favorite baseball player. Your grandpa wasn't thrilled to come home from work and find him like that. As the evening went on, I started to notice little things that broke my heart. Emily began clearing away the pizza boxes and napkins without being asked, as if it were a chore drilled into her to keep Beatrice's house immaculate. Jacob kept glancing at the clock and asking if it was bedtime yet, as if he were afraid of breaking some unspoken rule. Emily, sweetie, you don't have to clean up right now. We can do it together later. But Mom says if we don't clean up right away, we're just making more work for other people. Your mom was right that helping is important, I said gently. But here in our house, everything doesn't have to be perfect all the time. Sometimes it's okay to just relax and enjoy being together. That night, after tucking both children into bed, I sat in the quiet living room and called Mr. Fleming to update him. How are they adjusting? He asked. Better than I thought. But I can tell they've been walking on eggshells for a long time. They're afraid to make a mess, to be too loud, to show too much emotion. That tracks with what Michael wrote about Beatrice's parenting style. The good news is children are resilient. With consistent love and patience, they'll start to remember what it's like to just be kids again. In the weeks that followed, I watched Emily and Jacob slowly come back to life. Emily started having tea parties with her stuffed animals instead of keeping them perfectly aligned on her shelf. Jacob started leaving his baseball glove on the kitchen counter and spreading his homework out on the dining table instead of packing it all away immediately. They started asking real questions about their dad. Not just the polished stories Beatrice had allowed, but deeper questions about his childhood, his worries, his dreams, and what made him laugh. The moment that really changed everything, though, came on a rainy Saturday afternoon. I was in the kitchen making lunch, quietly crying to myself over a memory of Michael, when Emily walked in and saw me. "Grandma Carol, are you sad about Daddy?" I wiped my tears and knelt to look her in the eyes. "Yes, sweetie. I miss him very much. Do you feel sad about Daddy too?" She nodded slowly. "Mommy told me I'm not supposed to cry about Daddy because it makes other people sad." "Oh, Emily." I hugged her tight. "It is always okay to cry when you miss someone you love. Crying doesn't make me feel worse. It makes me feel proud that you loved your daddy so much. Can I cry with you sometimes?" "Always, my love. We can cry together and laugh together and remember Daddy together." That afternoon, the three of us ended up on the sofa, passing a box of tissues and telling stories through a mix of tears and laughter. For the first time since Michael died, his children were finally able to grieve the way they needed to without holding back, without worrying about how it might affect the adults around them. As Jacob fell asleep, leaning on my shoulder, and Emily snuggled with her head in my lap, I understood that Michael had given me far more than legal authority or financial resources. He had given me the chance to offer his children something much more profound: the freedom to be human, to feel everything without fear, to love without reservation. In doing so, he hadn't just rescued them. He had saved me too. 6 months later, I was standing in the kitchen of our new house, a cozy 3-bedroom home with a big backyard where Emily could practice her cartwheels and Jacob could throw a baseball against the fence. The house was filled with the sounds of children just being children. No worries about expensive furniture, no hushed voices, no pressure to maintain a fragile peace. Then the doorbell rang, pulling me from my thoughts. I glanced out the window and saw a familiar figure on the porch. It was Beatrice, holding a small gift bag, looking more uncertain than I had ever seen her. The last 6 months had not been kind to her. Word was she'd had to sell the big showpiece house. Michael's financial arrangements were clearly intentional. Most of his assets went into the trust for the children and me, leaving Beatrice with just enough to start over, but not enough to maintain her lavish lifestyle. "Hello, Carol," she said when I opened the door. "I was hoping to see the kids for a little bit." "It's not your visitation day," I replied calmly. "We had a clear schedule. Supervised visits every other Saturday afternoon." "I know," she said. I brought something for Emily's birthday next week, and I thought maybe we could talk." I studied her, searching for any trace of the old manipulation. But this time I saw something unexpected. A genuine humility. "The kids are doing homework," I said. "But you can come in for a bit." She followed me into the living room, where Jacob looked up from his math worksheet with a polite but cautious expression. "Hi, Mom." "Hi, sweetie. How's school?" "Good. I made the honor roll again." His tone was matter-of-fact, not fishing for praise, but not dismissive either. "That's wonderful, Jacob. Your father would be so proud." There was something different in the way she said it. Softer, less like she was playing a part. "Emily," I called upstairs. "Your mom is here." Emily appeared at the top of the stairs, and I saw Beatrice's face change as she took in her daughter. Emily's hair was in a messy ponytail, she was wearing visibly played-in clothes, and there was a smudge of what looked like marker on her cheek. She was, in short, a 9-year-old girl who was allowed to be a kid. Inside the bag was a small silver locket, simple and sweet. "It has a picture of your dad inside," Beatrice said softly. "I thought you might like to wear it sometimes." Emily opened the locket and smiled at the tiny photo of Michael inside. "Thanks, Mommy. It's really pretty." It was the most natural, unforced moment between them I had seen since before Michael died. When Emily went back upstairs and Jacob returned to his homework, Beatrice and I stood in the kitchen, the air thick with unspoken things. "They seem happy," she said at last. "They are happy. And they're also allowed to be sad. That's important too." She nodded slowly. "I wanted to tell you. I'm sorry, Carol, for how I treated you after Michael died. For the things I said." I leaned against the counter watching her face. "What changed?" "Losing them," she said quietly. "Losing the kids made me realize I was already losing them long before that. Trying to control everything instead of just loving them. And seeing them thrive with you, it made me see that Michael was right. He knew what they needed, and he knew I wasn't ready to give it to them." It was the closest Beatrice had ever come to taking responsibility, and though I hadn't expected it, a part of me softened. They still need their mom, I told her gently. Just not the version you were trying to be. They need someone real. As she was getting ready to leave, she paused at the door. Carol, would it be okay to schedule another visit next week, for Emily's birthday? I'd like to take them both out for ice cream. Just the three of us. I thought about it. 6 months ago, the idea of letting the kids go alone with Beatrice would have terrified me. But the woman in front of me wasn't the same one who had thrown out Michael's belongings and dismissed my grief. She wasn't completely changed, maybe she never would be, but she was trying. 1 hour, I said. And you call me when you pick them up, and when you drop them off. Thank you, she whispered. After she left, Jacob looked up from his homework. Grandma Carol, do you think Mom is getting better? It was a thoughtful question for a 10-year-old. I think she's really trying to, I said honestly. What do you think? He considered it for a moment. She seems sadder now, but nicer, he said finally. Like she misses Dad too. The way we do. That night after I tucked them in, I sat on the back porch with a cup of tea, thinking about everything that had brought us here. Just 6 months ago, I was living in my car, feeling utterly forgotten and insignificant. Tonight, I was the legal guardian of 2 incredible children, in a warm home with enough financial stability to never worry about making ends meet again. But honestly, the money wasn't the real gift Michael left me. The real gift was purpose. The next morning, Emily came into the kitchen as I was making pancakes, Michael's favorite with too much vanilla and a hint of cinnamon, just how he always eyeballed it. Grandma Carol, she said, climbing onto her usual stool at the counter. I dreamed about Daddy last night. Was it a happy dream or a sad dream? I asked, flipping a pancake. Happy. He was making pancakes just like you are now. And he told me he's happy you're taking care of us. Tears welled in my eyes, but I didn't try to hide them. By now, Emily knew that grown-ups cry too, and that tears don't always mean something is wrong. It makes me happy to take care of you too, sweetie. It's the best job I've ever had. As we sat around the breakfast table, with syrup dripping and orange juice spilling, I realized this was what Michael had worked so hard to secure for them in the end. Not just financial stability, but a real home. A place where love mattered more than perfection. Where they could cry and laugh, where being fully human was welcomed, not hidden away. That night, as I was tucking Emily into bed, she looked at me with those serious brown eyes that reminded me so much of Michael as a boy. Are you ever going to leave us again, Grandma Carol? Never, I said, gently brushing her hair from her forehead. I'm staying right here until you're all grown up and don't need me anymore. And what will you do then? She asked, her voice sleepy. I smiled, imagining all the possibilities. Then I'm going to be the grandma who spoils your kids and tells them all the embarrassing stories about how their parents used to eat dirt and put peanut butter in their hair. After I turned off her light and walked to my own room, I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. The woman looking back wasn't the same one who had packed her bags in silence 6 months ago. She looked stronger, more confident, but with a new softness too. She knew her worth now. Michael had saved all of us, his children, from growing up in an emotionally empty house, and me from believing I didn't matter. His final gift wasn't just financial support or legal documents. It was the reminder that love doesn't die with a person, that protecting the ones we love sometimes means making hard choices, and that real faith is trusting others to carry on what we started.